Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop, and this is my review of the Nike Air Max 1000. So this is in collaboration with the Zellerfeld, right? So Nike collaborated with them because they are specialists in 3D printing, and this actually was made in Germany, which is actually really cool. So yeah, of course, as far as the overall design goes, we can see some elements from the Air Max 1, especially with this line, right? It's supposed to copy the mudguard from the Air Max 1, which is pretty cool. And of course, we do have an Air Max unit here in the heel as well. So yeah, this shoe retails for 180 bucks. It came out on the sneakers app, I believe, but also it was available at ComplexCon, so it was a very limited drop. But yeah, this is the oat colorway, and this shoe is actually very interesting, and I was testing it out for the past couple of weeks, and here are some of my thoughts, right? So yeah, let's get it started right off with the tracciones. Also, as far as the traction pattern goes, it is inspired by the Air Max 1, and we do have some like squares, right? We got that kind of like old school look to it, and it's very rugged feeling, right? So this is all just TPU. This entire shoe is made from one material, I believe, right? And as far as the TPU goes, it actually feels pretty hard. It doesn't feel like really soft or anything like that, and it feels like it'll last a good amount of time, especially since it's actually pretty thick. Look at that, right? If you look at the thickness of the actual outsole or the bottom part of the shoe, actually is pretty thick, so I feel like it'll last a good amount of time. Of course, for a casual shoe, that's kind of what you're most worried about, right? You want the outsole to last a long time, and it feels like it'll last a good amount of time. And also, of course, grip. I mean, grip isn't as important in casual shoes. It's a little bit more important in hoop shoes, obviously, but you also don't want to be sliding around all over the place. But as you guys all know, like any type of foam has really good grip on most surfaces, and this shoe also had really good grip. You know, I was walking around outside, walking around in the mall with like that tiled surface, you know, with a really smooth finish, right? Also in my apartment, the wood floors had really good bites. Also at the gym, I was just testing it out as well. Just working, not doing legs though. I mean, you definitely should not work out, do leg workouts with this, but just working on upper body, I was fine as well. So yeah, the outsole was really nice. Also, there are two different types of patterns, right? So you can see the square. Some of the squares have this like smoother feel and texture to it. And then on the lateral side, we have some more of like a thicker texture to it. So you can see the 3D printing a little bit better, I guess, right? And you can really see the 3D printing with this Nike swoosh. You can see how the machine was making the actual filament and kind of like curving a little bit and making the swoosh, which I think is really cool. So there is the outsole. Moving on to the heel to toe transition. Heel to toe transition also is pretty important to me in casual shoes as well as hoop shoes, because if I'm gonna be walking around all day and I want to be very comfortable, obviously if I don't care about comfort as much, I just wear boots or something like that. That doesn't really matter. But if I want comfort, heel to toe transition is pretty important to me, right? So here in the heel, we have a nice kind of like rounded shape, of course, and also here in the forefoot, look at this, very curved shape. So just from the shape, it actually has a very nice rocking motion, which feels nice if you're just walking around all day, right? But also this shoe actually has a good amount of flex here in the forefoot, which surprised me because I thought the foam was gonna, it's first of all, it's really thick, so I thought it was gonna be a little bit stiffer feeling, but I don't know what they did with the structure, but actually has a lot of, look at this, a lot of flex, which surprised me, you know? So it feels really nice here in the forefoot as well. And also we do have a nice bit of compression here in the heel, which does feel nice just walking around doing heel dominant strides. The Air Max unit doesn't compress as much, you know what I mean, but it does have a nice little compression there. So overall heel to toe transition, very smooth, very comfortable. And segueing into the cushioning setup, the cushion is absolutely insane, right? The underfoot cushion is so freaking comfortable in this shoe, right? So obviously we have this Air Max unit, and the Air Max unit obviously is not 3D printed. They 3D printed a whole shoe, and I believe they added the Air Max unit after the fact, right? But yeah, it says future, right? It says Air Max 1000 here on the lateral side, and it says future here on the medial side. And we do have this orange colored Air Max unit here in this colorway, and it actually has a little bit of compression, but it's like hard to feel, you know what I mean? It's kind of weird. But yeah, if you look at the actual footage, there's a lot of compression here, but for some reason it doesn't feel as soft as some other shoes, you know what I mean? I'm not saying it's stiff or anything, it's just not as soft as I thought, you know what I mean? Because when I was walking around, I was like, oh, it's pretty nice, but it's not the most comfortable. It doesn't have the most amount of heel compression. But then when I looked at the actual footage, footage. When I was filming it, I was like, yo, that's a lot of compression, you know? But either way, yeah, you are very high up off the ground, however, right? So obviously, I mean, most people probably don't care about court feel or being low to the ground in their casual shoes. Me, not as much as in my hoop shoes, but also I don't want to be like super high up off the ground, right? And also I don't want something like unstable feeling. I want to feel a little bit more stable, a little bit more grounded when I'm just like out walking, you know? So I didn't really feel that all too much. It never felt unstable to me at all, but it is high up off the ground. It's giving me like almost 2 inches extra height, which is kind of insane. So it's very thick, right? But the main thing about this cushioning setup that I absolutely love is the step-in comfort and the underfoot cushion. So yeah, if you look closely at the actual footbed of the shoe, you can see this really cool texture, right? And they can only make this with 3D printing. So you can see that there are some kind of open slits in the actual footbed. And with the actual material, it's not that the actual foam or the TPU filament is soft per se, but it's because of those extra kind of like, you can see the two kind of lines together, right? And they're not touching, but then when you put your foot onto the actual like footbed, it actually kind of curves in a little bit and gives you a little bit more of like a soft feel, you know what I mean? So unlike a foam, because a foam is just really soft, right? And it kind of like bounces up and down. And with that, you know, there are air pockets in the actual foam. It does degrade over time. It does bottom out. Like all foams do that, right? But with this, I feel like it'll last a good amount longer because it's not actually foam. The material is just doing that, it's collapsing, and that's what's giving you that really nice comfortable feel underfoot. And it does that the entire footbed, you know what I mean? One thing that I did notice, however, is stuff gets stuck in it, right? And you can see like I wear socks, and I wore black socks with this a couple times as well, and you can see like, you know, if you take off your socks, you can, you know how you have like the black kind of like strings in between your toes and stuff like that. That seems to be getting stuck in the shoe a little bit, you know what I mean? So it's kind of hard to see on the camera, but yeah, it's getting stuck inside the actual slits as well there. So that kind of sucks, and getting like cleaning all that out is a pain in the ass too. But the step-in comfort is absolutely insane, right? It feels weird because I've never felt anything like this. You know what I mean? Like it feels like I'm actually walking on a cloud. And I say that to a lot of shoes that have like a really soft foam setup, but this actually feels like really soft. It's cloud-like, you know what I mean? So that's really apparent in the forefoot though. The forefoot is just so comfortable. Step-in comfort right when I put the shoe on, very nice. And also walking around, I can feel it. Feels great, right? But it doesn't feel too thick, you know? It feels like, you know, there's a little bit of that kind of like material, and then it kind of like stops. You know what I mean? Stops at some point, and then it gets a little bit stiff underneath that, which I think is good because I feel like if they made it a little bit too thick, it would be just too mushy feeling. I feel like some people might like that if you want a really ultra soft, mushy feeling cushion, but to me, this is really nice and perfect. You know, it's just the right amount. So in the forefoot, that's nice, but in the heel, it definitely gets a little bit thicker, which kind of sucks, right? If I feel the forefoot, I feel like the actual filament, it goes a little bit deeper, right? But here in the heel, because they had to accommodate the thickness of the Air Max unit, they actually made it a lot thinner. So the step-in comfort in the heel, like the heel is not that nice, you know what I mean? The forefoot is super nice, and then the heel right underneath my foot for the underfoot cushion and the step-in comfort, not as soft. It's still kind of soft, but not that much, right? Where you get the actual comfort in the heel is from the heel compression, but like I said, it's not like that amazing, you know what I mean? So yeah, I really love the way they made this because you can't really do this, you know, with 3D printing. It's actually made possible because of this. So yeah, the step-in comfort, I absolutely love it. The only downside is, of course, just cleaning it, you know what I mean? Like I guess if you want to wear these barefoot, I did wear these barefoot a lot as well, that'll be better, right? But having like the cloth, you know, like from the sock getting stuck in there is kind of annoying. So anyways, there's that. Moving on to the upper. So the upper also is just super interesting, right? You can see that there are different textures, obviously, right? And here in the toe box, it feels like a cloth almost, you know what I mean? Look at how soft it is, you know what I mean? Like I was really surprised because it actually feels cloth-like to me. There's a little bit of a stretch to it, and I don't know, like the way they made it just it feels really, really nice. But also, it seems like it's double layered. You know what I mean? There are some spots in this upper, like right over here. I don't know if you guys can see, but it's really like when you kind of like squeeze it, it feels like there's two materials, right? And then a really soft structure in between, and it feels like there's like air in between there, right? So that actually adds a lot to the comfort of the upper as well. And it's not super stiff either. You know what I mean? First of all, comparing to like I don't know, the moon shoe, the lunar rock that I got from Way, that material is super duper thick, you know what I mean? And some kind of like slides or clogs, they have a really thick and stiff upper, you know what I mean? Especially like right on top of your toes. But with this, it's actually soft. Also, it has a nice flex here in the forefoot. So this material actually kind of like goes over your foot, you know what I mean? And because it's soft, it feels really comfortable on top of my toes, on top of my foot here as well. So I really like that. And of course, on top of like the middle of your foot right here, you have that same type of like material, right? That really soft like pattern that you have here in the footbed. And look at this. It literally feels more like a cloth, like a textile material. This is a little bit more of a stiffer material. The actual texture feels a little bit more like a cloth, but then it gets even softer here in the midfoot. Look at this. You know what I mean? So it retains its shape, however, though. Look at this. It retains its shape really well, but then it's just so soft and comfortable. And it has that, it's kind of thick, right? But it has that kind of like air in between like two layers of material kind of feel. So that feels really comfortable as well. The opening starts at the middle of the shoe as well. You know, very similar to like the Yeezy foam runners. And you have a very similar shape too, right? So yeah, it's really easy to slide on. And also, I don't know if you guys can see, but on top of the material as well, you have that same type of material that's on the footbed too. So yeah, the upper actually really surprised me. Also right here, right where this part is, where it's kind of like touching your foot, I never had any kind of like discomfort or pain, you know what I mean? For example, in the foam runners, when I would wear that shoe kind of like without socks, it would kind of dig in and feel a little bit uncomfortable, right? But with this, they just made it so, first of all, it's a little bit thicker, but also with that kind of like kind of structure, it feels really soft. I never had any issues with this shoe wearing it barefoot, right? Around kind of like the collar of the shoe. So that feels really nice. And obviously here in the heel, it does cup in a little bit, adds for a little bit better of a like feel for heel lockdown, but it's not amazing, you know what I mean? It is pretty easy to slide off and slide on, which of course is a good thing. And when I was walking around, I had no issues with it sliding off either, right? So I like that, because with my casual shoes, if I could just slip it on very easily, I like that a little bit better. And yeah, I had no issues with, you know, I could just literally just slide these on. You know what I mean? I didn't have to bend down, like kind of open it. I could just slide it. It's a little bit uncomfortable at first, but once you break it in, it gets a little bit, you know, more open and stuff like that. You can slide it on, slide off really easily, right? So also here in the back of the shoe, it says air, which I think is pretty cool. Also, there is a small swoosh here on the lateral side and also on the medial side, right? So there is the upper there. Moving on to the fit. So I went up half a size because they only have full sizes available. So if you're like a 9.5, just go 10, right? So you never really want to go down half a size with slides and stuff like that. And yeah, me going up half a size, obviously it is a little bit roomy, but I don't mind that because I don't like a super snug fit in like my casual shoes, you know what I mean? So definitely it's a little bit wide, also a little bit long, and also very roomy here in the toe box, which I don't really mind again, right? But again, if you want a snug fit in this type of shoe, then go true to size, but you can't really go true to size if you're half size, so if you're half size, go up half a size, you know what I mean? So for me, it was a nice kind of like roomy fit, very comfortable to wear around all day, but also my foot wasn't moving inside of the shoe too much either, which I liked, right? Because the foam texture, it's like sticky, you know what I mean? It's like a drop-in midsole where it actually has good grip. So when I was wearing it with my sock, you know, my sock, you know, had good lockdown, wasn't moving inside, but also barefoot, it felt nice as well. And now moving on to the weight of the shoe, I mean, this shoe is not super lightweight feeling, you know what I mean? It's usually 3D printed shoes are kind of heavy, so I'm guessing like 13, 14 ounces. Yeah, 13.7 ounces. Let's check the other shoe. 14.25 ounces. That's a 0.5 ounce difference. That's a pretty big difference in weight, but yeah, it's pretty heavy. It's a little bit bulky as well because the material isn't super thin, but it's like soft, you know, conforms to my foot very well, so I don't really mind it too much, but it definitely is also very high up off the ground, right? So it's definitely not super minimal, right? If you're in the market for a very minimal feeling shoe, you know what I mean? This definitely isn't the best option. It's bulky, it's thick, you know? But I didn't mind it because First of all, it's a very comfortable shoe, not only for the cushion, but also the upper really soft on my foot, you know what I mean? So there's that. Moving on to the ventilation. Ventilation is not the best though, right? So even through this upper, it actually doesn't allow for that much airflow, right? And also on the sides, not that much, right? You know, maybe just a tiny bit, but not that much. And when I was wearing these shoes inside, right, you know, when I was working and stuff like that, my foot actually got hot, you know what I mean? So I had to take these off and just switch to my slides, or just take it off altogether, because I don't like having hot feet inside, right? When I was walking around outside and there was a little bit of a breeze, it was a little bit cooler, especially when I was wearing it barefoot, but still a little bit more on the warmer side of things. So yeah, that's one thing that kind of sucks about this, because you guys remember the Adidas 3D printed shoe? That one had crazy airflow, right? So if they could add a little bit more airflow, that would have been nice, but I feel like they were gearing this more towards like the fall and winter, because this just kind of came out. So it's a little bit more, it's a little bit better for the elements, you know what I mean, versus the Adidas 3D printed shoe, which is a little bit more for the summer and would be terrible for like the winter, especially if it's raining and stuff like that. So but also I don't think this would be the best for rain either. You know what I mean? So there is the ventilation there. And now moving on to the aesthetics, I feel like it looks okay, you know what I mean? As far as the design goes, it looks pretty interesting. I really like the texture on here, right? The two different textures, I mean 3 different textures, I guess, right? So there's a different texture here on the lateral side, and also on the, like, just on the sides of the shoe. And then on top you have that different texture, which is really soft, and you have this really smooth texture where the toe box is, right? So that looks nice. I like the different textures this shoe has, but as far as the overall design goes, I feel like it looks a little bit too chonky for me. You know, I feel like chonky shoes are in style now though. You know what I mean? They are in style, but like everyone that I asked, they all said it looks really nice though. Like my girl said it looks nice, my friend said it looks nice, but for me, I feel like it looks okay. So tell us what you guys think of the aesthetics down in the comment section below. So wrapping things up, yeah, with this 3D printed technology, I need more. You know what I mean? Like, I need more shoes with this type of cushion. You know, no, I don't want the Air Max. The Air Max, I don't really like Air Max too much, you know what I mean? But the 3D printed technology with the footbed, the underfoot cushion is absolutely insane. So freaking comfortable. You guys really need to try this out, right? And with the upper as well, I wish, you know, they could make it a little bit softer. It's soft, don't get me wrong, it's soft, especially for this type of material with the 3D print and stuff like that. But if they could make it a little bit thinner, a little bit softer, maybe make a shoe for the summer next year. That would be really nice, you know, with better airflow. But yeah, this shoe is really freaking comfortable. And if you're in the market for a very unique, very crazy looking shoe, and you're all for 3D printing, then this is an amazing option, right? So I was very impressed with it. Very comfortable. I was wearing these pretty much all day, especially when I was going out, you know what I mean? Not inside as much because it was a little bit hot. That about concludes my review of the Nike Air Max 1000. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.